What's up, guys? We're back at WordCamp 2023 in Athens, and we're here for an interview with Andy, the product owner of WordPress ToolKit and WP Guardian. Here to ask a few questions. How are you doing today, Andy?
I'm doing pretty good. Hope you're doing good too.
Oh, yeah. It's a bit hot, isn't it, at the moment, but bearable. First question is going to be, how does the WordPress ToolKit differentiate itself from other WordPress management tools on the market, in your opinion?
Mm-hmm. So it's an interesting question because when we have created WP ToolKit, it was 2013, there were not that many tools on the market. You had like Managed WP and similar tools, and their main problem was that they required you to have a plugin inside WordPress, and their abilities were kind of limited by that. So we're a part of a control panel. We have full control over the server, and that means we can do a lot, especially in terms of security, right? So our, let's say, first thing that we did that really differentiated us was that we actually added a lot of security measures that worked with the web server and other server components on a really low close level, and that allowed us to have a fleet of security measures that was unmatched by any other competitive solutions. And even up to this date, you could probably have the same security in terms of security measures, but you will most likely have to install a couple of plugins instead of that. And plugins, not the management solutions even. So I would say that this is the major objective differentiator, because I can do marketing pitches and so on, but this is the factual thing. We're working with control panel on a really low level, and we can do a lot of things that other solutions cannot do. And this gives us a lot of really cool abilities. For example, if you're trying to do cloning with a different solution, they will ask you credentials, FTP this, FTP that. We don't need that. You just click a button and say, hey, this is the domain I want the site to be cloned to, and it's done.
Wow, that's brilliant. And I mean, security is a big thing in WordPress, isn't it? And like you said, you do usually, I've always had to, multiple security plugins, which of course can lead to more security if some does get updated, potentially using an old security plugin. How does the WordPress ToolKit simplify WordPress management process for its users? Well, you did answer, I suppose, slightly in the last question.
Yeah, but I can elaborate. So the idea we had for WP ToolKit was that tons of sites, even back in 2013 and 12, were using WordPress. According to our stats, 80% of all the sites we had were WordPress, right? And that made total sense for us to actually help people out in terms of managing their sites. So when we initially were thinking about what do we do specifically to help them out, and when I did the research, security again came as a really big thing, and certain ease of use things like even installing WordPress, because at that time there were not really a lot of software that could help you quickly install things. And we thought, hey, WordPress is famous for its quick installation, but you still have to do a lot of manual things like download things, unpack, create a database. We could automate all that and do it with a click, right? So that's what we did. We found a bunch of things that most people using WordPress would need to, install, secure, update. So these are the key things that we were doing. And we gave people the ability to do that from multiple sites at once, which is a really great thing. You don't have to do site-by-site, log into every site and do all these things. And from then on, we expanded this to give more power to users, like automatic updates, configuration, cloning. And as the development went by and years went by, so to say, we just continued to add more and more things that would most likely save time. Well, not even most likely. I had feedback from a customer back in 2014 when we were just showing WP ToolKit, and he's like, oh my God, these security measures you have, it would take me a couple of hours to do that manually, and this is like a minute or maybe 2 minutes at most for each site. So saving time was something that people explicitly told us ToolKit helps with, right? And as we added more functionality, because things like cloning might be a bit different to do manually, this really helped. So I would say that the toolkit's main purpose is not only helping things do things quickly. in a more convenient way without CLI, or editing config files. Because, for example, if you need to enable debug, you usually go to WP config PHP, do the manual like editing and so on and so on. But in WP ToolKit, you just hit a switch and that's it, it's done.
That's amazing. And I think you hit on a good point, which is the fact that most WordPress users don't just have one site; they can have multiple going into.
They don't want to. They're scared. That's scary going to CLI editing files. Oh no!
And having to manage everything individually just takes so much time. So this saves you an enormous amount of time, really. Yeah.
So lots of cool things in GUI, automation, and also applying all of that to multiple sites at once.
What are some key challenges that you've encountered during the development of the WordPress toolkit? How are they addressed? If anything, obviously, you want to say.
Oh, we're experiencing challenges every day. What I would say that if we're not going into too much detail, so too deep, the main problems we usually have is actually not with WordPress itself. WordPress itself is stable, doesn't really have any issues, but plugins and themes, oh, that's another story.
Is that compatibility?
Oh, yeah, compatibility, and just things like, for example, we do cloning, right? We need to change the URL of a site. WordPress actually stores that URL in a single place in the database, so you would think that you just do the cloning, copy files, create database, and change this one line, and it's all good. Not anymore, because a bunch of plugins can store this URL somewhere in their own database, or it's not a relative URL, but an absolute URL for whatever reason. We have no idea why, right? Or they can store it in some cache files. So you do cloning, you experience issues. And since you have like 60-something thousand WordPress plugins alone, not even counting themes, it is not feasible to actually check all of them, right? So we did the cloning and we started to gather lots of feedback on what went wrong with a particular plugin. That was and still is sort of a challenge, because if we do a feature that kind of might affect something related to plugins, it is difficult to predict how it will work, unfortunately, because of the nature of a plugin. Some plugins might be just abandoned, right? Some might be outdated. Different versions do different things. For example, certain plugins can change the database structure. I think WooCommerce did that once. And like, for example, if you do an update and you do some kind of a partial backup, you cannot do a restore easily because the database structure changed. You can just need to restore the whole site. So lots of difficulties, but again, most of them are related to plugins and themes. And this is something that we like in generally to like anticipate and plan for. But in many cases, we have to just wait for customers to tell us, hey, this plugin doesn't really work that well with that feature. So we ask them to like provide us details and fix that.
So you're continuously basically developing.
Absolutely. Just day by day, looking at tickets and getting feedback from support engineers, from cPanel, Plesk, and so on and so on.
Can you share some customer feedback that has helped shape the evolution of WordPress toolkit? I know that we just spoke about, similar sort of thing.
Spoilers.
Is there one particular sort of bit of feedback that you were like, that really helped out sort of develop what we have now?
Mm-hmm. So the initial development of WP ToolKit back in 2013 was not based on customer feedback. It was made based on like stats and research and so on and so on. But immediately after that, I would say like 50% of all the things we're doing are based on customer feedback. Mm-hmm. So this is like the basis of what we're doing and why we're doing, regardless of whether the customer tells me something on WordCamps, which is really useful. So if you're on a WordCamp and see us, just go to us and tell us the feedback. We'll write it down. We'll act on it. Or it's coming from support team. And for example, we have a really great synergy with cPanel's support team. They're really proactively looking at forums and tickets and going to us and trying to get all the details, right? And with Plesk as well, we're looking at the forums and stuff like that. So most of our, like even more than 50%, in some cases, the development is focused on actually getting, our development is focused on things requested or complained about by our customers. Give a specific example, just one, because I can just sit for a couple of hours just firing off these examples, right? We had a feature called labels. Labels is basically something that you put on a site in the list of sites in WP ToolKit to differentiate, say, a staging site from a production site. So it was 5 predefined labels, and people quickly found that it is not enough for them. They wanted to do colors. We didn't do colors initially because that is not really accessibility friendly, right, for people who are colorblind. So we're not doing that by default. But people also asked us to have custom labels, custom text. So I did a lot of research into what exactly people want to put there. And this is something that we've changed. It was a pretty recent change, I think we did last year. We give people the ability to have different colors, different text there, an unlimited number of labels, actually. So not just 1 out of 5. And also the ability to say, this label should be only visible to me, or this label should be public. Like everybody who can access the site in WP ToolKit should actually see that. Without that feedback, we could not have done this because we wouldn't know what exactly to do with labels, right? So customer feedback in general, extremely crucial to us.
I think that's sometimes what does make, certain things better than others is when they do listen to their customers. Because at the end of the day, that's your main, purpose, isn't it?
Absolutely. Yeah. But it's like the important thing here is that we want to understand customers' problem, because customers often come with solutions like, I need this. Like, are you sure you need this? Like, what exactly is the problem? Because often the problem can be solved in an easier way.
Oh, so you'd prefer to actually get the problem?
Yes, absolutely. You ask everybody on the dev team, like they will tell you exactly the same thing. Plesk, cPanel, doesn't matter. We all have the same approach. Like, give us the problem, because we're the experts at solving problems, right? So we would rather have a problem that we can attack from different angles, because we have multiple experts, right, who have their own vision and experience, and we can come up with way better solutions usually.
What updates or improvements can we expect to see in the WordPress toolkit in the near future?
That would go into spoilers territory. But
I was going to say, yeah, you probably. Is there anything that you can say, or should we?
Oh yeah, I can. I can say a couple of things. That we're planning to add this thing called virtual patching to WP ToolKit. We will have it for WP Guardian as well, but that's a separate discussion. We also are looking into, again, accommodating more feedback from users. It's mostly a lot of like smaller things and quality of life changes, but they're still important. And we're getting feedback that even the tiniest changes can do a lot and change a lot in terms of quality of life for hosters. So this is definitely what we continue to do. We will completely switch WP ToolKit to be API-based. We're like 80% API-based. We have our own REST API, which people can use to integrate with WP ToolKit. And the rest 20% will come later this year, right? And we have a bunch of features that we're kind of trying to figure out in which order we want to deliver them, because WP ToolKit serves as a basis for some other WordPress products in the company. And we must take into account what these guys want, right? What guys at WP Square want, what guys at WP Guardian want, and so on and so on. So we deliver the maximum value for everybody first, right? But things that we're just talking about right now is things like, for example, doing client reports, where you can get a report for like what's happened with your site for a month, like number of updates, hits, and so on and so on. Or things like generating static sites. But we don't want to be like a simple tool, like click a button and get a static site. That would be useful, but we want to have a better workflow for that. For example, you have a staging site and production site, and you can designate these sites as such. And then you can say, hey, my production site is static, so every time I do a change on staging, can you please automatically generate the static copy of a site and just copy it there so I don't have to do it manually and click buttons? That would really help in general, not just WP ToolKit, but also other products that are using WP ToolKit.
You did actually mention WP Guardian, which will move quite nicely on to the next question we have. Could you explain the primary functions of WP Guardian, how it enhances security for WordPress sites in particularly?
Mm-hmm. So the idea is that we have a lot of partners who have Plesk and cPanel, but they also have servers not managed by Plesk or cPanel, and they have WordPress sites there, we know, right? Mm-hmm. And if you have cPanel and Plesk, you have WP ToolKit and other tools that what we are sure we can guarantee is the security of the sites, right? But if you don't have Plesk or cPanel and you cannot install cPanel on a server for whatever reason, or Plesk, we want to help you as well. So WP Guardian's idea is it's a SaaS product and you don't have to host it and maintain it. Where you go, you connect your servers without a panel, without cPanel or Plesk, and we find all the WordPress sites there. We tell you what version there are, what plugins there are, and stuff like that. And then you can update that. You can set up automatic updates for the whole server for a bunch of sites, anything you want, right? And there's a feature that we were planning to add again called virtual patches, where it acts as a tiny web application firewall. We install a really small plugin inside WordPress itself. And as soon as we find a vulnerability in that site, and we have a virtual patch for that, which is basically a web application firewall rule, we apply that automatically. The upside is that it's not a generic web application firewall. It doesn't have thousands of rules that slow down the site. It's just a recent vulnerability, not recent, one of the things we've looked into recently. There was a serious vulnerability in Duplicator plugin some time ago, around 2 years, that could allow people to get access to basically any file on a server, even the passwords for the whole server. So it was a crazy bad vulnerability that was immediately patched by the Duplicator team. But still, some people don't update. So they still have that old Duplicator plugin version. And for people like that, who for some reason cannot update or are scared to update, virtual patches will come to help, because basically you can just enable that. We literally close this vulnerability. It's a single line for that vulnerability, literally a single line of code. And you can calmly plan the update when we're doing that. So for now, WP Guardian, to reiterate, no panel servers, SaaS product, you connect your servers, we give you all the information, and you can do updates manually, automatically, or you can do virtual patching. And we're giving you a lot of information about vulnerabilities, like CVSS score, whether it's exploited or not, and so on and so on. We do plan to add more security stuff later, but that's a bit in the future. So we're still working on the first version of WP Guardian.
What motivated the development of WP Guardian? What specific security issues is it designed to address? We just went over sort of a few of them in the last question, but more for the motive. What motivated development?
Well, the motivation was we have WP ToolKit, which is a tool that manages millions of WordPress sites, right? And we do have customers and partners who really are happy with cPanel and WP ToolKit, for example. We just had a discussion with such customer recently with Jesse, and they're really happy. But some customers say, hey, we have some legacy servers, for example, or we have some customers who refuse to use a panel for whatever reason. And we still want to provide security for them, because that kind of is our image as a hoster, and just security is getting more and more important in the WordPress ecosystem.
Of course, you don't want users to be, get their sites hacked, and suddenly you look like the bad guy.
Yes, exactly. And I just gave an example of the duplicator vulnerability. I mean, it's not just a single site getting hacked. You can just hack the whole server through that. So hosters were really anxious about the fact that they could not get WP ToolKit there. They were asking us, can you do WP ToolKit for no panel servers? But that is really difficult because, as I've said, WP ToolKit is integrated with cPanel and Plesk on a really low level, and relies on a lot of things like working with databases or web server and so on and so on, the APIs, because both control panels are really mature. They have tons of features. They can do lots of things, right? That's why it's great for us to rely on them. And if there is no control panel, it's kind of difficult for us to do a lot of stuff. We just have to invent things, and we often might want to tell people hey, can you install this on a server under root account manually? People don't really like that. So, and then we figure out, okay, we might not want to do that. To replace control panel completely, it's really difficult. It's just making a third control panel. Doesn't make a lot of sense. But if security is the reason people really care about that, at least for a start, because lots of these servers are legacy servers, right? They're not necessarily going to continue, working on these servers for too long. We can give them a tool that could help them actually install that, and it's done. We'll help you with security. At least that part will be covered. If your customers on these servers don't care, and if you do care, we'll give you a tool to handle that.
how user-friendly is WP Guardian for someone with limited technical knowledge?
It's an interesting question because WP Guardian is supposed to be for hosters who by default should have pretty good technical knowledge, right? But still, we have a separate designer dedicated for that project. And she comes from the, B2C businesses. She has a lot of experience in making designs for applications that were used by literally hundreds of millions, probably, people. So, and she's really, she really cares about the user experience. Every time we tell her, hey, this might not be that important, it's hosters, like, no. Because if it's good for the end user, it will be good for hoster, not the other way around.
Absolutely.
So it's like with accessibility. If you do something like an application or a website that is accessible with CAG compliant, it's good. It helps not only people who have accessibility issues, disabilities, right, but also general public who do not have such issues. And this is the same approach. So we would like it to be user-friendly and great. It's not necessarily a requirement because, again, hosters, they don't really do that. They understand what it is, but we would like to have a really great foundation because it won't hurt. And it kind of motivates the team as well, hey, we have this really nice looking product that's sleek and easy to use. So it is not our goal, but it is pretty usable to end users.
And finally, how long until we can see the WP Guardian available for users or hosting companies to use?
Oh, this is a good question. So we have a beta right now, which every hoster can go and sign up and try and give us their feedback, right? We plan to release the final product, I think, around Q3. Until the end of Q3, it should be available to the general public. And by general public, I mean hosters, right? Like when it comes to people who don't host, who like agencies and so on, we do not have any immediate plans because hosters are our primary audience, right? But we were discussing this internally. If you have a SaaS system that can manage multiple servers, what's stopping us or preventing us theoretically from offering this product, say, to agencies who work with multiple different servers? It might work with Plesk and cPanel and wherever, and they just want to manage all these things from a single place, right? So this is something that we will evaluate a bit later, and depending on customer feedback and on demand, and because it actually will give us, and not us, it will give our users a lot of really cool features. So for example, if you have a server with Plesk and you have a server with cPanel, both have WP ToolKit, right? If you connect them to the platform, you can actually do cross-server cloning without asking for credentials, which is an extremely cool feature, because if you want to do that, on other management systems, you have to specify the IP address, FTP access, whatnot. So, and you have to, oh my God, where are they stored? Where do I get them? And so on and so on. In our system, you could just say, hey, this is the server, this is the domain, clone it. So it opens a lot of really cool possibilities, but that's something for the future. It's not set in stone. We'll have to discuss a lot of this internally to see what makes sense and when.
Oh, perfect. Well, thank you, Andy. That's been extremely insightful. I'm sure there's going to be a lot of people very keen to listen to this and sort of hear what's going on. Thank you again for your time. I'm sure you're busy and you're probably going to have to head back to the stall soon. There's a lot of people here. So thanks again, Andy.
Thank you very much. Have a nice day.